Good afternoon. We'll call this informational forum to order. And before we begin, I'll ask my esteemed co-chair if she has remarks that she'd like to make.
Not much. I'm very glad we're having this hearing today. I think it's a really important topic, and I'm glad we'll have the opportunity to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cheeseman.
I will echo the comments of my House Chair and look forward to listening to what our friends have to tell us today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we felt that this forum was important, informational forum, because there's been a lot of in the press and otherwise about the UConn Health Center, whether it be from a budget perspective, analysis going on, studies and what have you. And often we don't get a chance to hear from those that may be the subject of that work. And that's what the goal of that is today, of this effort today, to shed light on what I think is the great work happening at UConn Health Center. And we'll give the floor to President Merrick. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting us to be with you today. I'm Radenka Merrick, President of University of Connecticut. Shortly, we will be sharing with you some of the absolutely incredible, life-saving and life-changing research, care, and innovation that happens at UConn Health. We are thrilled to introduce you to some of our state faculty who are behind this work, and they are sitting behind me, and you are going to hear their remarkable stories. The state's $864 million investment in UConn Health in 2011 through the Bioscience Connecticut initiatives not only transformed our physical infrastructure in Farmington, it served as a catalyst for the bioscience sector in the region and state. Our students, faculty, and staff push the frontier of our research enterprise, continue to compete at the highest level. We are engaging in the necessary work to advance science and medicine that will positively impact the lives of people in the state and beyond. As integrated health delivery system, that is what we must do. It is inherent in our responsibility to teach, advance medicine, and provide exemplary clinical care. The state has developed and invested in integrated clinical, academic, and research system that is growing. Continued support will compound the previous support, resulting in more discoveries, further external research support, more startups, greater impact and recognition of the UConn and UConn Health, improve patient care and outcome for Connecticut residents and those around the world. We are grateful for your ongoing support. And with that, I will turn to Dr. Bruce Liang, Interim CEO of UConn Health and Dean of School of Medicine. Dr. Liang.
Thank you, President Merrick, and thank you to the committee for inviting us today. And we have a few things to share with you today. The first thing is, what is UConn Health? It's Connecticut's only public academic medical center. We have three missions: public missions, education. If we could advance to the next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. Patient care, biomedical science and research, and residency training. We do have important impact for the state through these three public missions. On the next slide, please. We have $3.3 billion of economic impact to the state, 5,400 full and part-time employees at UConn Health, and our annual operating budget is $1.6 billion. About a quarter of them are patients from the Medicaid population, almost 800 medical and dental school graduates placed in various hospitals in the state as part of their continued residency training program. And we have generated a number of impacts, such as 21,000 jobs. Now, these are direct jobs generated from the expenditure, as well as so-called downstream, which is what we call indirect jobs that are generated from the taxpayers paying, who receive revenue and pay from the jobs, as well as upstream, which is what we call induced jobs, such as when our researchers do their research, they order supplies, they order various things to enable their research, and therefore induce upstream revenue that way and creating jobs. And in total, we contribute about $2.1 billion to the state GDP, and have a positive impact to the tune of $68 million tax generated. So what have we done to deliver on the promise of Bioscience Connecticut? As you know, Bioscience Connecticut was created thanks to your support and the state. It was a transformative $864 million state investment in facilities, infrastructure, programs, and people. The goals were to stimulate short and long-term economic activity and job creation, spur bioscience innovation, meet Connecticut's future healthcare needs, and provide access to the state-of-the-art care. And the next couple of slides would just outline exactly what happened with Bioscience Connecticut and the impact from UConn Health to the state. And as you could see, we constructed a state-of-the-art educational center, research space renovation, incubator lab addition, and our successful collaboration with the Jackson Laboratory. Just during the construction, as a reminder, Bioscience Connecticut created 6,200 construction jobs. And we have additional components in world-class infrastructure for research, education, and patient care. Most of the Bioscience Connecticut contracts were awarded to Connecticut companies, as shown in this slide. And that included construction of a new hospital tower, outpatient pavilion, clinical renovation, as well as the dental care center. One of the deliverables of Bioscience Connecticut is the expansion of medical and dental school enrollment, and that can be shown in the next slide. As you can see here, plotted on the top is the number of medical students that were enrolled since 2011 till 2023 so far, and a 30% increase in the medical school enrollment. Why is that important? Because we are the state-only public medical school. We are the leading source of current and future physicians, surgeons, and dentists, as well as an important source of scientists and public health experts. So we're the home of the Master for Public Health degree program at the medical school. And so what about the graduates? What did they do after they graduate? Well, 63% of the School of Dental Medicine graduates practice in Connecticut. So that's what we meant by being a leading source of future source of dentists for the state. 70% of the medical school and residency graduates practice in medicine in Connecticut, and 53% of our engineering workforce are UConn graduates. And those are the numbers you have there. And we also launched transformative collaboration with the Jackson Lab, as we could see some numbers in the next slide. From FY14 till now, there has been a cumulative joint grant to the tune of $128 million awarded, with $47 million that's pending. And I know this would be of interest to you, so I did some additional work on the latest, which is early stage or startup companies as a result of this collaboration with JAX. I want to give you two examples. There's an early stage startup called General Biomics, which was co-founded by Dr. George Weinstock from JAX and Dr. Yanjiao Zhao from the medical school. In brief, this company aims to use microbiome and multi-omics. I'm happy to explain that technical term later, for early prediction of babies who are born prematurely. They are prone to having infection, and also they have breathing difficulties. So this is to arrive at some predictors of which baby, which neonate will have issue with infection and breathing difficulty. And that's the basis of General Biomics, which is a new company spun off by collaboration between the medical school and JAX. Another one which you will hear about directly from Dr. Sejin Lee later, so I won't belabor that point. What about the research? By the numbers, you could see that the incubator, yeah, I think we wanna, yeah, there we go. We have doubled the incubator space. As you can see that UConn Health, because of the Bioscience Connecticut Technology Incubator Program, had played a very important role and contributed significantly to the overall university's startup company. That's in that middle column there, $60 million raised in debt and equity funding, as well as other revenues that's generated in that middle column. So we believe this is a deliverable of Bioscience Connecticut. And cumulatively, 159 companies have participated since 2003. These include companies that are there, companies that have graduated from TID program, as well as any new companies that have just recently joined. We're very pleased that in 2021, we won the International Business Innovation Association Randall Whaley Award, which recognized the success of the Technology Incubator Program. And what about the research grants? Well, UConn Health has garnered a record-breaking $129 million in FY 2023. These are mostly from the National Institutes of Health, which, as you know, is rigorously competed for on the national level. Since 2017, this represented a $50 million increase in the awards, which will then translate into research expenditure that generates the jobs that I was alluding to earlier. But the research awards is the leading indicator of what's to come, which is the expenditure and job creation. And one other Bioscience Connecticut goal is the healthcare needs of Connecticut's future. As you can see here, we are in 10 different places in the state, and we provide the same access regardless of what kind of insurance, the private insurance or the state insurance or the Medicaid insurance that the patients have. And they enjoy this top quality care with the same access. If you could just back up one slide, I just want to tell you a very brief story. This is an actual picture of our cardiac cath team. I'm very proud to tell you that they have a record-breaking so-called door-to-balloon time for heart attack patients, which means they measure the time the patients show up at the door of our medical center to when the balloon will open up the blocked artery. And that was 10 minutes. 10 minutes, because time is muscle. The sooner you can open up the blockage, the better you can salvage the muscle, which was at risk for damage. And in terms of the access to the healthcare, if we could, yeah, there you go. There's been a significant increase in the physician practice group. As you could see, that curve from FY13 to 2024 on the budget continues to show this increase. And how does that translate into net patient revenue as measured by millions of dollars? And that you can also see that, especially right after COVID, not only we bounced back very quickly from the COVID, we have marked an inflection point with a sharp rise in the amount of net clinical revenue. So this year in June 30th, we expect we're going to close the book with $919 million of net patient revenue. I don't think we are small anymore compared to before. The clinical revenue per capita of population is similar to that of other academic health centers that are also state supported. And we have data to share with you should you be interested in. And what about the residency program? The residence doctors are the one who actually at your bedside in the middle of the night, should you get into trouble. We are one of the largest residency program in the country. In fact, we rank top 10% of all residency programs in the country by volume. And you have the breakdown there, 737 medical residents, 103 dental residents. Together, we bring in from outside the state $159 million, which are used to pay the resident salary fringe, as well as the mentorship that happens for these resident doctors, because they don't just there to learn, they also have to do scholarly work and research. So the federal government recognized that and provided this most recently $159 million. Now, these are distributed to the area hospitals, Connecticut Children, Hartford Hospital, Hospital of Central Connecticut, UConn Health, John Dempsey Hospital, and St. Francis Hospital. And we are quite proud to say that we are a major safety net care hospital, including unique services. If you go to the next slide, please. That's provided by UConn Health. And unique services mean poison control center, sickle cell patients, mental health, dental health. These are the services that we provide uniquely, not really offered by the private community of providers. Also, specialty surgery. We have patients come from every one of 169 Connecticut towns who actually bypass their local hospital and come to us for specialty surgery, which is ortho, cardiac, spine, neurosurgery, for example. And because we have better access than some of the private providers, which does actually cost us on the operation side clinically $104 million every year. Some of you may have experienced this, that the implants or the supplies for spine surgery or arthroplastic and orthopedic surgery, they're very expensive and we don't get reimbursed. We are under reimbursed for those supplies. And the result is a net loss of $104 million. But we've been able to do that with, I think, relatively small amount of state support for that. So finally, that concludes my area. I think what you really want to hear directly is our innovators. We have about 13 of them here. They're going to tell you their stories. They're going to tell you why they come to UConn Health, why they stay at UConn Health, because of the importance of this tripartite mission where the clinical and research innovation are interconnected. The clinical operation with our hospital that we operate and manage, which of course I am proud to say very effectively allows and enables that cutting edge innovation research. And you're going to hear directly from each one of these outstanding investigators. So with that, I think I'll stop. Thank you, President Merrick. Thank you, committee members. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Liang, very much for your presentation. And as the researchers come up to present, I would ask that we hold our questions until everyone has had a chance to make their presentation, or else the last person to speak could be here a long time, knowing us, a long time from now. So hopefully we can refrain until then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to get a chance to talk with the legislators that have made UConn have been supportive of us, and those of you here that might not know about all the cool stuff that we're doing. I'm a biomedical engineering professor at UConn Health, and I have an appointment in the engineering school as well. But I'm at UConn Health for a reason, which is that close connection to our physicians and the patients there that motivate me as an engineer to help solve their medical problems. So I work on 3D printed customized breast prosthetics. And I think there's a piece of material that may have circulated the back row there, or will be in a moment. There it is. This is, I'm pioneering this type of material for use in customized breast prosthetics. And what a prosthetic is, it's not an implant, but it's something a woman might wear in her bra if she's had a mastectomy and didn't want that surgical reconstruction. I started working on it because a friend of mine had breast cancer, and she relayed the story of how she had received great care at UConn Health, but her challenge was dealing with the prosthetics that are shown on the left-hand slide there, left-hand side of the slide that you have in front of you. Women are given a silicone gel, basically a bag of silicone gel to wear in their bra, and it's hot, sweaty, slippery, causes them a lot of embarrassment, is never exactly the right same shape or size as what they are. And so when my friend relayed that kind of embarrassment and problems, I thought, wait, I can do something about that. And it came to me that even though I'm a faculty in the dental school, and you might be wondering, why is she working on this? But in dentistry, they now, instead of having to use a goopy gel to make a print of your teeth, they're now using intraoral scanners that collect the information digitally about the tooth that you had that now may have a malformed, due to a caries or some other problem with your tooth. They're able to take that 3D image and then use additive manufacturing to create a tooth of the exact right same shape, the crown that they'll implant. And so I thought, wait, we could do that now with 3D printing. And I had learned about a new technology developed in Europe. So right now it's Germany, Switzerland, and France that are leaders in printing gels. So this is not the kind of 3D printer that you might find in a hobbyist's basement or a library in Connecticut. But this is more like a printer that extrudes the gel like frosting coming out of a frosting bag. But it's hard to get it controlled to make those fine little patterns. They're almost this, just a thick piece of hair, this prosthetic piece that's been circulating around. So another reason why it matters to people in Connecticut, I'm working on this. Well, we have we're the second highest, Connecticut has the most, sorry, let me get this straight. Connecticut is ranked second out of all the states in the United States for new breast cancer cases. Fortunately, we have also the lowest death rate of any of the states. So we have good early detection and good care, but there's a lot of cancer survivors, and some of them don't necessarily want an implant of a foreign material in their body after just struggling with, what's gone on for them surgically. So long story short, I was able to get support through Women's Philanthropy. UConn Foundation reached out to some of their contacts, and this project attracted their attention. And that allowed me to buy one of the only 3D printers in the country capable of large scale printing of gels. And so we're developing that here. And because of my access to the patients through the Carol and Ray Neag Comprehensive Cancer Center, those clinicians had a number of people coming to complain to them about their prosthetic. It wasn't just my friend coming to me and saying how terrible it is. At all their follow-up visits, they would say, Lisa, so many women hate their prosthetics. So they have funneled women over to me. And right now, 10 women are wearing the prosthetics and have loved them so much relative to what they could get commercially that I did, a patent application has been submitted. It's taken a couple of years now to get the process down, but I'm looking at being able to commercialize this later this year. I am a entrepreneur, had started a company and sold it before I came to UConn. I was up in Boston at the Connecticut, at the Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And I came here because I could get that same environment of clinicians nearby, of being able to walk directly over and talk with them so that I can focus my time on doing this cool science. So if you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I think I hit my main points here, but I hope you see that because of this setup that we have, I can do work like this. And I'm not the only one. You're going to hear from another professor of biomedical engineering today that's here at UConn, thanks to Bioscience Connecticut. And so it's not only me, there's many of us, and just happy to tell you about this one project. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, senators and representatives and other esteemed members of our state of Connecticut for the opportunity to speak today. UConn Health is a very special place for our state of Connecticut. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, educated, uneducated, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter if you have insurance or you don't have insurance. All that matters is that everyone and anyone that comes to UConn Health is embraced with eternal hope for a cure for whatever medical problem they have, and a promise that the care they receive is second to none. My name is Kethan Balsara, and I'm the Chief of Neurosurgery. My colleague Dan Roberts and I co-direct the Cranial Nerve and Brainstem Disorder Program for the University of Connecticut. Senators and representatives, throughout our state, there are countless individuals suffering from disorders at the base of the skull who have been told that they have no options. Take Carol, for example, whose family for generations has been in Connecticut. At the age of 40, she developed uncontrollable facial twitching that over a course of 20 years made her a complete social recluse. And then there's Thomas, a star high school track athlete who can't run anymore because any breeze against his face triggers this agonizing pain that makes him drop to his knees. Senators and representatives, for patients like this and countless others who may have been told or been denied care, they have access to world-class care at UConn Health. The treatment is complex, but our results have made us a destination center. Through a multidisciplinary team incorporating surgeons, researchers, and countless other collaborators immediately involved in patient care at UConn Health, we offer skull-based surgery, which is safe and effective and world-class surgery to access areas of the brain once considered inaccessible. If it's a blood vessel problem, we can immediately study the problem in collaboration with our scientists to shape the future of the treatment. If it's a tumor, we immediately send it to our labs, and in collaboration with Jackson Labs, we find weaknesses in the tumor that we then exploit to use novel medications to prolong lives of people and oftentimes and potentially cure them. We have been able to develop tools to do this that only 8 or 9 places in the world currently have. So senators and representatives, as I turn it over to my colleague Dan Roberts, I just wanted to echo that for any individual that comes to UConn Health, they are embraced with eternal hope for a cure and a promise that their care is second to none. And in the process, we will help shape the future of the disease treatment. So thank you.
I'd like to start with a brief introduction. My name is Daniel Roberts. Among this group of my esteemed colleagues, I probably am one of the more junior faculty members. I can say wholeheartedly that one of the reasons why I decided to come to Connecticut, having no roots in this state, as a faculty member was the Bioscience Initiative, specifically the collaboration with Jackson Laboratory. The opportunity to work at an institution that has the tools of basic science, clinical care, and teaching was the reason why I came here to for my career. So our work is very complex. My practice is skull-based surgery and ear reconstructive surgery. I also do procedures like cochlear implants. Our research specifically is targeting patient outcomes. And one of the areas of interest has been use of augmented reality microscopy to deliver precise surgical outcomes. And we've published a number of papers in this area. And it was this specific effort that led us to the story that I'd like to tell you today. So this was a story that played out in the Hartford Current over the last couple of months. There was a young man who is from Brazil, and he has a condition called glossopharyngeal neuralgia, also known as suicide disease, which is an intractable ear pain. He lived outside of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and local ENT and neurosurgical teams identified the University of Connecticut as the place to go because of our publications, the interest and our efforts in academic medicine. And so he traveled to Connecticut via the United Nations, where he spoke about the problems of rare diseases in front of a forum at the United Nations, and then came to UConn Health. He crowdfunded for his surgery and then paid cash to have surgery at UConn Health. And his story was played out around the holidays in the Hartford Current. And we're happy to report that he has done really well. He's happy with his outcome, and we're ecstatic about the future for him. And so what I think this tells us is that the same access for Raphael, whose picture is up on the screen, is available to every patient in Connecticut, whether they have resources or not. And we have brought an internationally, regionally, and now reputation to the approach of skull-based surgery using academic medicine and advances in surgical care. And we're very proud of our research and the future for our team. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Roberts, if you could just tell us where you came from to be here at UConn.
Yeah, so I came from Los Angeles. So, you know, when junior faculty members are entering academic medicine, they look around for great opportunities. And I decided that Connecticut was the place for our family based on the resources and the efforts in bioscience that were taking place here. It was just the perfect time. You know, I've always thought that our institution could be like a University of North Carolina Medical Center. We have certainly owned them in basketball recently, and there's no reason why we can't do the same in academic medicine. So,
Not to prolong it, but anybody that comes from sunny LA to our beautiful climate, got to be a pretty good draw somewhere, right? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is George Cashel. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a physician scientist. I work in the field of geriatric medicine, which is clinical care for older adults, and gerontology, which is research into aging. And I have the privilege of serving as the director of the UConn Center on Aging, which is a multidisciplinary center that brings together expertise from many different areas, seeking to improve lives of older adults. Our motto is add life to years rather than just years to life. And I just want to highlight a couple of areas we're working in. One of them is, everything I'm going to talk about has to do with what we do at the interface of the institution, the bench, the bedside, the institution, and the community. And the reason my colleagues and I are at UConn Health is because we can do everything seamlessly. And in the course of a day, we can actually, in the course of any given day, I do all of that. My colleagues and I work in all those domains. So I want to just highlight a couple of accomplishments that may be of interest to the group. One is we were recently awarded, a little over 2 years ago, UConn Pepper Center, which is named after Claude Pepper, who was a congressman from Florida some years ago, who was passionate about senior health issues. And it's a National Institute of Health Center of Excellence in improving independence in older adults, which has been a focus of ours for many years. And there any given time, there are only 15 such centers in the country, and a very privileged to have one of those here in Connecticut right now. Ours is focused on developing approaches which are more precise, more effective, drawing up on many of the strengths that you heard about earlier, and you'll be hearing about later on our campus and across the university. we've been very privileged to have been successful at funding. We had a good run last couple of years, over a 3-year period. We obtained about $50 million in research funding to our group. And I want to highlight 2 areas. One of that I want to talk very briefly about today. One has to do with gerotherapeutics, which is really a new approach to treating the diseases of old age, everything from Alzheimer's disease to cancer, cardiovascular disease, loss of muscle, loss of bone, by targeting the one aspect of disease that we have as a society and a profession ignored over all these years, which is aging itself. We now have drugs available, some discovered here, some elsewhere, called gerotherapeutics that allow them to target biological aging and therefore slow the onset of progression of not one chronic disease, but multiple chronic diseases. The other issue I want to highlight very briefly today comes at the other end of the spectrum. First one had to do with more going from bench to the bedside. The other one has to do more with going from the institution to the community. And that has to do work that actually members of our center have testified to other committees in this building in past years, and has to do with dealing with the costs of the state of long-term care costs, which currently exceed around about $3.4 billion a year out of the Medicaid fund, and have been rising dramatically. And through efforts working through our center, as well as working through Money Follows the Person program funded by the federal government, had some successes at bending the curve on these costs, which is in getting people out of nursing homes back to the community. And what this draws upon is the finding that the way that we deal with long-term care actually differs dramatically across the country. The laws of gravity, laws of biology are the same in Oregon as they are in Connecticut. But it turns out that if you're older and have certain diseases, you're much more likely to wind up in a nursing home in Connecticut than in Oregon. And this is an effort at rebalancing that, of finding a much better balance between the two. If I can just have the next slide, please. So very briefly, the issues that we target are shown on the right. We're very focused on issues having to do with cognition, host defense, including vaccines and immunity, voiding incontinence, mobility and falls, all the issues that really determine independence in later life, determine whether a person can stay in their own home, determine whether they need help or not, determine whether or not they need to wind up in a nursing home. And so to that end, the gerotherapeutics I talk about really target those issues and other approaches that we're testing as well. And then as shown at the bottom on the left, these efforts in terms of improving care coordination and helping individuals move out of institutions back into community are something we're very passionate about, because it really represents what I call a win-win-win strategy for everyone involved. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Rob Asseltine, Professor and Chair of the Division of Behavioral Sciences and Community Health. And I'm pleased to be able to talk to you a bit about some work that my group has been doing for going on 20 years now, but in the past 6 or 7 years has really become focused on improving our ability to identify patients at risk of suicidal behavior. As we know, very few people here, I'm sure, have not been touched by suicide, and from a societal and healthcare perspective, this is now becoming an increasing burden that our healthcare system is struggling to meet. We've had nearly a 40% increase in rates of suicide within the last 20, 25 years. And it's incumbent upon us to come up with better ways to be able to identify and manage folks who are at risk. So one question I often get asked is, why do we focus on patients within the healthcare system? Aren't they engaged? Aren't they getting the care that they need? And the answer is, and there's an abundant research literature on this now, is that these patients who attempt suicide and who die by suicide are indeed in the system, but the system is not good at recognizing their risk. As many as 50, 60, 70% of individuals who die by suicide have had a healthcare encounter within 6 months of their death. So what we are doing is using machine learning and AI type approaches to take the data in patients' clinical records that come from any encounter that they may have had, and use that to model and predict their risk of future suicidal behavior. I want to draw your attention to the Venn diagram up above. which just gives you an example of some of the work we've been able to do here. This is our collaboration with Connecticut Children's Medical Center, who is doing universal screening in their emergency department to detect patients at risk of suicide. And by the way, Children's is a national leader in this area. So we worked with them to apply a prediction algorithm using their data to their patients. And we were able to improve the number of patients that were truly at risk of suicidal behavior, that is, that presented within a year for a suicide attempt by 40%. And so that is something that we're really pleased with, given the outstanding work that Children's is already doing in this area. So in addition to developing these state-of-the-science machine learning algorithms to predict patients at risk, we've also been able to address that health equity problem with this. As we know, we have rising rates of suicidal behavior nationally, but it's particularly problematic among patients of color and children of color as well. And so our work is showing that we can do a better job than existing strategies for assessment in identifying youth of color who are at risk of suicide. Our clinical and industry partners are a mix of those that are local and regional, Hartford Healthcare, Children's, as I've said, but also some national organizations around healthcare analytics and healthcare delivery. This allows us to make sure that the benefits of our work accrue to patients in Connecticut, but also giving us national reach and scope with our work. So why UConn? For me, in my work, suicide is a multidisciplinary problem that challenges almost all clinical specialties, because when a patient's in crisis, you don't know where they're going to be in the system. So having access to all that at UConn Health is extremely important, but also having not just clinical collaborators whom we welcome from everywhere, but clinical collaborators that are very understanding of and sophisticated in the research enterprise is really critical. And that's why UConn Health is really a terrific place for us to do this work. Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me here today. I'm going to start this off a little bit differently by asking you to imagine that you're at the height of your career and you're being forced to give it all up because you can't see a computer screen. Imagine having to ask your friends and family for a car ride because you no longer have a license. Now imagine finding out that you're about to be a grandparent for the first time, only to know that you'll never be able to read your grandchild a book. Retinitis pigmentosa and macular degeneration are devastating diseases which ultimately lead to blindness. My name is Nicole Wagner, and I am the president and CEO of a UConn spinoff company called Lamb Division. What Lamb Division is doing is we are developing a protein-based artificial retina to treat those diseases that ultimately cause blindness, diseases like retinitis pigmentosa and macular degeneration. These diseases affect millions of people worldwide. Macular degeneration, in fact, is the leading cause of blindness in people 55 and older. Retinitis pigmentosa is the leading cause of heritable blindness. So how do we get involved in this? As I mentioned, we are a University of Connecticut spinoff company. We are out of discoveries made in Dr. Robert Burge's lab. I was a graduate student in Bob Burge's lab back in 2007, and then I graduated in 2013 with my PhD, where I was able to take the company and build it out. So the company is now located at the UConn TIP facility at 400 Farmington Avenue. We have about 2,000 square feet of lab space there. We have a total of 6 employees, and we've secured about $10 million in non-dilutive funding to support development of the technology. So this is funding coming from the National Eye Institute, the National Science Foundation, as well as NASA. So you may ask, what is NASA's involvement and why is they're interested in the work that we're doing? So we are actually one of the first companies that is leveraging the International Space Station to potentially manufacture a product that could be used in patients on the ground. So we have flown 9 missions to the International Space Station. We actually have a payload on the International Space Station right now. And we have plans to continue to look at potentially creating GMP, which is good manufacturing practices, on the space station to continue to benefit people on Earth. So for us, University of Connecticut, it's certainly in my blood. As a graduate student, well, as an undergrad, then a graduate student, I did my postdoc. I actually have an assistant research professor title still at UConn. As I mentioned, we're still at the UConn TIP building. And all of our employees are either have some ties to UConn or the state of Connecticut from one of the universities as well. You know, again, you can see up there, I contributed to the tax, you know, to our employees. And then I think for us, what another big key thing is this is where we call home. So my husband, he did his MD PhD at the UConn Health Center. That's how I ended up meeting him. We now have 3 children. We're located in Ashford, Connecticut. And so for us, I can't imagine starting a business anywhere else or moving anywhere else. I think there's a huge talent base. I think there's, you know, the academic institution working with UConn Health and UConn Stores. It just gives us such an opportunity to grow this company. And this truly is a UConn startup. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Representatives, thanks so much for.
Could you put your mic on, please? There you
Oh, apologies. Senators, representatives, thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to share a little bit about my research today. I'll start first with who am I? My name is Margaret Callahan. I'm a medical oncologist, and I joined the faculty at UConn 4 months ago, so I'm one of the more recent additions. I came from my prior institution in New York City, which was Memorial Sloan Kettering, where I'd spent the last 14 years doing oncology research and clinical care. And but I have strong roots here in Connecticut, having grown up here, and really the foundation, my academic foundation, started at UConn. I was an undergrad at the UConn Stores campus in molecular and cell biology, and then got an MD and a PhD at UConn Health. And that's really where the location where that first ignited my passion in cancer immunotherapy, or the idea that your immune system can fight cancer. I think today that's taken as sort of a commonplace idea, but when I was going through graduate school, that was still really quite innovative. And in fact, some of the work that my advisor was doing 20 years ago is front page news today. After getting 3 degrees from UConn, I finally decided I should probably go further afield. I did my residency at UCSF in California, one of the first places where I heard, you're from UConn in Alaska, and I had to correct them. And then I decided I really belonged back in the East Coast, where folks recognized that UConn Huskies was in Connecticut. And I came back to Memorial Sloan Kettering and did my fellowship in medical oncology there, and stayed on as a faculty member for a decade. And at Memorial Sloan Kettering, my focus was really continuing development of cancer immunotherapies. That passion that was really ignited at UConn when I was an MD PhD student. And it was very lucky for me that the whole rest of the world really woke up to this concept about the same time. And I was able to participate in the development of new cancer immunotherapies, many of which are FDA approved through clinical trials and translational research there. And I came to UConn 4 months ago after being having lots of opportunities and being at a number of major academic centers, because I really see that and sort of deeply feel in an almost religious way that cancer patients benefit so much from the science that can be developed in an academic setting. And I've always really thrived in those academic settings. And I'm so glad institutions like Sloan Kettering and some of our other really prestigious institutions exist, and we can refer patients there. But in the past few years, changes in technology and access really mean that there are new opportunities, and not every patient has the resources or the social support to travel for cancer care. And I think we have excellent opportunities here to develop and continue to develop cancer care that really gives similar if not the same opportunities right here at home for our patients here in Connecticut. And UConn really is the place to see that mission through. It's a three-part vision of educating clinicians, myself being one of them, of academic and clinical excellence, and really uniquely makes UConn an environment where me and my colleagues who really want to not just practice excellent clinical medicine, but through research and innovation, develop the medicine that's going to be available to our patients tomorrow and bring it to them as soon as possible today. It can only take place in a setting like UConn. There are other hospitals in the area. I wouldn't have considered those because they're just not a place where my type of research and clinical practice could thrive. So I'll tell you a couple bullet points about what my research has been and what research I'm planning to continue doing here at UConn. And like I said, I've really been interested for a long time in immunotherapy, and that's been a really cool innovation. Something like 40% of patients with cancer now may be available to be treated with immunotherapies that get their immune system to fight their cancer. But we know immunotherapy doesn't work for everybody. It's a very expensive medicine, can have some serious side effects, and we need to do a better job of figuring out which patients are right for this treatment and which treatments are best for each patient. And so we've been working with colleagues in bioinformatics to really empower providers and patients to have the individual data about their immune system and their cancer so they can make the best treatment decision for them, which is a savings in terms of patient care, focusing patient care and cost. And that's really what we're hoping to deliver here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajkumar Verma, and I'm assistant professor of neuroscience in UConn Medical School, and my lab does basic research in small animals, including mice. So I will tell you what we do and then how a clinical input in our basic research is needed to increase the treatment or to enhance the treatment. So as you all know that stroke is one of the leading cause of the death and the leading cause of disability. And from last 30 years, there has not been no treatment for this stroke, as well as the treatment cost because of the long-term rehabilitation is very, very high. So in the absence of these neuroprotective treatments or the treatment that can improve recovery after stroke occurs, so we have taken up this challenge. In my lab, I do drug discovery. So we actually identified experimental drugs and then test them in mouse model if they work. So from last several years, there has been a failure of so many preclinical drugs that went into the clinical trial and they failed. And the major reason was the disconnect between the basic scientist and the clinician or bench to bedside approach. And this translational gap lead to scientific discovery, delay in the scientific discovery for a long time and even so far. Given this very heterogeneous disorder where there is no treatment, no hope so far for the treatment, very few industrial or biopharmaceutical company actually do drug discovery in this disorder. So so we took up this challenge in collaboration with the clinical teams. So we get input from the clinicians. So how patient feel, what are the protein that actually responsible to increase damage. So we identify those proteins and then we test those proteins in a mouse model where we create a stroke to mimic the human stroke and then test those drugs. And once these drugs show efficacy, so using this approach, we have actually identified a drug, experimental drug, which can reduce damage up to 50% in the stroke model, in a mouse model. However, NIH or other funding agency or, you know, or no, foundations, they're not gonna give us, you know, money to treat mouse. We need that to show that this drug can be effective in human model too. So, so we have access to the blood samples. So we need to show if um, if this drug, which we are showing effective in mouse model, can also work in humans. So we took human samples, which is right now. So we get this sample from our hospital setting, and we test our drug in these blood samples to show if this drug is effective. So fortunately, our drug was found effective in reducing the blood activity, blood cells, immune cell activity. So once we showed that this drug is effective in human sample too, then we approached the funding agency. We put this grant and we got fundings from American Heart Association, NIH, R01 grants, and also we were able to secure this small business grants from NIH to develop these molecules for further clinical trials. So I want to emphasize why our basic research needs a intricate collaboration with the clinical unit to first we ourselves learn about the stroke, how it affects in the human patient. That's how we will be able to actually modulate or model that type of symptoms in mouse, and then we can have a effective treatment strategy, you know, so that we can take it to the clinical trial. Also, it gives us opportunity for enhanced collaboration with the clinicians. When we are in the same units, we learn them and we talk to them and we discuss what's going on now, new in their field, and they discuss what's going on in our field. There is a real-time data collections, a real-time analysis. So because the UConn Health Hospital is very next to our building, so we can go anytime and process the sample immediately so that we get the right information. We get educational opportunities when there are some clinical symposium going on. We go there and we find the collaborators. So in this way, I was able to get one clinical collaborators, you know, just because I was able to go to the clinical symposium here. And there is a lot of resource sharing. So I want to say I joined UConn as a postdoctoral scientist here, and I saw opportunity to grow here, you know, because there are so much facilities here in basic science as well as clinical research, as well as there is incubator program where you can take your experimental drug up to the clinical trial. So so I stayed here and got opportunity to grow here. So with that, I want to end my talk. Thank you.
We're ready on. Okay. Hi, thanks for this opportunity for us to share our voices. I think you'll find that we're a group that's has the responsibility and the honor of representing UConn Health, but I think you'll see that we're really just a tip of the iceberg, because there are so many of us at UConn Health and at UConn who share the same passions and the same drives. So again, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to talk actually about 4 things: clinical research, translation and innovation, students, and an ecosystem in Connecticut and beyond. My name's Caroline Deely. I'm an associate professor in orthodontics, orthopedic surgery, biomedical engineering, and cell biology. And first thing I'd like to address is that I'm still at UConn. So like Nicole, I never left. I came here to get my PhD. And then in molecular cell biology, I went to UConn Health for my postdoc. And I honestly didn't expect to stay, but the environment that I found at UConn Health in terms of my research, which was my focus at the time, allowed me to accelerate my entry into the academic track. So I was able to become a faculty member in just 2 years. And several decades later, I am still there, because what I found at UConn is a dynamic environment where I feel I can have impact. And that impact can come in several different ways, but impact is what's really important to me and what I think is what drives all of us. My research focus is on arthritis. This is an incurable problem. It affects 57 million US adults at a staggering healthcare and disability cost of $308 billion every year. That's more than the GDP of some countries. I'm pursuing two research thrusts right now within this area. One is to prevent osteoarthritis in younger patients by developing a pre-surgical treatment. The other is to treat osteoarthritis in older patients through an injectable drug. Both of these approaches are supported by patent filings, and I founded a startup company to translate this research into more direct impact for patients. And what I wanted to mention is that this work, and particularly its translation, would never have happened if I weren't at UConn Health. So the project itself and its clinical applications are nothing I studied for the first couple of decades here. I was a basic scientist. And it wasn't until actually because investigators, clinicians at CCMC reached out to me and said, you know, we're clinicians here, we can't do any research because we don't have any infrastructure for it. We have no support for it. And we heard about you. We'd like to work with you so that we can do research together. And it was through them that we developed a collaboration that really works because I can supply the scientific background about the cellular processes, and they supply the incredibly and essential information about the patients. I can't even tell you the blind alleys I would have gone down if I didn't have them stop and say, no, Caroline, no, because in the clinic, this is what happens. It doesn't matter, you know, if that's what the treatment should do, that's not the pipeline, it won't work. It's not translatable. So it's so important to have the clinical input. And again, this would never have even happened if it weren't for people approaching me and wanting to do research. It's not the first time. I have another project under development right now. Same thing. Someone approached me. It's in a different area. The new project is actually a 3-university collaboration. So we're involved with Jackson Labs as well. So again, the 3 institutions are collaborating together. That's a meniscus repair project. So I really can't say enough about how essential it is to have the research enterprise and the clinical enterprise linked together. And obviously we have a statewide presence because people are coming to us. I should also mention that, you know, this clinical research, again, going both ways from one institution to another is really important. And the support at UConn in terms of translating the research. Now you're hearing, what is this translation? What translating is sort of this bench to bedside. So it's doing experiments at the bench as a scientist, but having the clinical application and being able to move that into the clinic. There's an essential step in that process that many people aren't aware of, and that's research commercialization. Because particularly in biomedicine and clinical advances, the costs for clinical testing, clinical trials, you know, FDA approvals, validations far outweigh what any government grant can provide. And so we have to go to industry in order to get funding to have this happen. And that can only happen if those technologies are protected. In other words, if they're commercialized, patented, moved into startups like Nicole is doing, like some others have talked about. That's the only way to get that to happen. And UConn's resources have been instrumental in this. So again, they approached me and said, you know, what you're working on could be really important. I think you should, you know, you should patent this and you should form a company around this. And so over many years, I've learned how to do this. I took advantage of some of the training that's available to faculty members and students at UConn through the School of Business and through its National Science Foundation, NSF-funded national programs on technology development training for faculty members, specifically so that faculty can translate their discoveries out of our ivory towers, right, and out to impact the communities and to impact the patients. We have to learn how to do this. And so there's training for this. NSF has a nationwide program. And I took all those programs at UConn, learned immensely from them. And in fact, I actually now represent those programs. So I help introduce other faculty members and students to these programs and help develop their ability to have a startup and to translate the discoveries in engineering, in arts, in children's development, not all in biomedical sciences, and all kinds of things that UConn does. And it's thrilling to be part of that ecosystem. Through my interactions with that ecosystem and through interactions with the TIP incubator, which you've heard mentioned a couple times, Nicole's company, again, is at the TIP incubator. I also have had a TIP company and realized at the time that, there are no students here. Where are all the students? I mean, I run a research lab that's crawling with students. There were no students in any of the companies. And so I thought, okay, that has to change. And I didn't really ask anybody like, hey, can I start a program? I just did it. And we've now, 10 or so years later, we've now put 220 UConn students through this program. It's entrepreneurship and innovation training, where they're paired with a UConn startup in the TIP incubator for a summer immersion in this experience. And that experience led me to think, we could do this statewide. And so with the help of some state of Connecticut programming, as well as President Radenka Merrick's strong support, I was able to obtain 2 years of funding to expand that kind of model to 9 or 10 other universities and colleges. And we put another 200 students, most of them Connecticut residents, through this kind of research and technology development immersions. That was largely to address biomedical sciences and biotechnology as part of the bioscience technology innovation. I also teach courses on technology development and clinical innovation to medical and dental students and residents. And I do this not because I think I'm going to pull them from their paths. They're very committed and they want to be with patients so bad. But because, I know they're smart. We all know they're smart and they're going to have good ideas. And if they don't know how to unlock that box and take the first step towards taking that good idea, whether it's a new computer program or something to do with patient care, if they don't know how to move that to some kind of technology development, some kind of commercialization or a business, that idea is going to die on the vine. And that's just a shame. And we don't need that in our state, in our country, or in our world. We need all the good ideas, especially in healthcare, that we can get. And so my goal in these classes and in these programs is to help demystify what technology innovation is, so students will be more likely to make use of their education and their training and their discoveries.
Thank you,
I get the
Doctor.
feeling that I'm going overtime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I may be the only person in this room that didn't know that when everybody here speaks about clinicians, that they're talking about the hospital. They're talking about folks who are primarily in the hospital, who dealing with patients and directly at UConn Health. So I guess I was the only one, but anyway.
Okay, so so thank you so much for having me here. I am Charles Liu, a professor of biomedical engineering department at the UConn School of Dental Medicine. I joined UConn Health from the University of Pennsylvania in 2018. In past 5 years, my research lab focused on developing innovative biosensors and medical devices to advance patient care and lower the healthcare cost. So as you know, for disease diagnostics, so this is a time-consuming and expensive process. So typically you need to collect a sample from the hospital, then you need to waiting for a few days to get the result. So here in our lab, we want to develop some low cost rapid test for infection disease and the cancer diagnostics. On the one hand, we take advantage the emergent CRISPR technology to develop some simple CRISPR technology for infectious disease like SARS-CoV-2 virus detections. On the other hand, so we built some medical device for rapid point of care test of the cancer and the infectious disease. So here I just give you a few examples. In 2020, to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, in our research lab, we invent a new CRISPR technology to detect SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this technology was received a lot of interest from the academic and the industry. So then this technology was licensed to company for commercializations. And then we also built some medical device. For instance, we built the biosensor for the SARS-CoV-2 HIV detection by using the glucose meter. So typically for the glucose meter is used for the blood glucose test. Here we repurpose the glucose meter and they integrated the assay into the biosensor for the rapid detections of the HIV virus or SARS-CoV-2. So you can run the test at home. You don't need to go to the hospital. You use your finger prick blood or use the saliva. Do the test. So we just send this device to Zambia for HIV advanced detections. Another project we are going is we just use the paper material to build some medical device. We call the paper-based microfluidic device for cervical cancer screening for women health. With this device, you don't need a very expensive equipment. You can run the test at home. You use your naked eye, check the result, or use the smartphone to look at the result. If you just get 30 minutes, you can get the result. So far, I have 7 million NIH funding for this different research project. I have 8 patent application, and the 1 patent have license to company. So at the end, I want to emphasize to choose UConn Health, maybe one of the best choice for my career, and because UConn Health have the unique source and the collaborations. So having the UConn Health hospital system connected to our PME department that accelerated our product to translation from the lab to clinicians. So this is why we can move our research project forward very fast and rapidly commercialize our technology. So thank you so much.
There's a button at the bottom of the base of that mic. There you go.
Hello, my name is Dr. Barian Damariam. I went to medical school because I wanted to have the privilege of taking care of the most vulnerable U.S. citizens that I could. I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm a hematologist oncologist on the faculty at the University of Connecticut Health, where I'm also a practicing physician and a researcher. And I'd like to do something a little unconventional and ask you to just close your eyes for a few seconds with me. I want you to imagine the worst pain you or someone you love have ever experienced, whether that's labor pain, an excruciating toothache, the worst migraine, or a bone fracture. And I want you to imagine all at once, intermittently, out of the blue, and there's nothing you or your doctor can do to stop it once it starts. And I want you to open your eyes. That is what individuals born with sickle cell disease live with every single day. The state of Connecticut, just like all the other 50 states, puts an incredible resource into identifying every baby born in the state who has sickle cell disease through our funded newborn screening program. And our state does an excellent job of getting all of those identified babies into pediatric care. Until very recently, all of those children and their parents were told that the likelihood of that child born with sickle cell disease reaching adulthood was essentially zero. But with some advances in pediatric care of those babies born with sickle cell disease, it is now expected that nearly every baby diagnosed with sickle cell disease in this country will reach adulthood. The problem is our healthcare system fails those children. They get excellent pediatric care. They are taken care of by pediatricians who are dedicated toward making sure that those painful episodes occur as least as possible. However, once they reach adulthood, they often flounder. They can't find specialists that want to take care of them because specialists like me, who are hematologists, oncologists, mostly go into our specialty to take care of patients with cancer. So what do? They wait for the next pain crisis to occur and they go to an emergency department or get hospitalized. But we know that the underlying damage to their body continues to occur, even in between those painful episodes. So they die young, usually in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And most of those admissions to hospitals, which are very costly and very lengthy, and most of those visits to emergency departments are preventable if those adults are able to get continued care past the pediatric timeframe. I'm really happy to be at the University of Connecticut Health because UConn allows me to live my dream of taking care of the most vulnerable citizens in our country every single day. And that's by taking care of this sickle cell population. It's estimated that about 2,000 adults in Connecticut live with sickle cell disease. And UConn, its hospital and its clinical outpatient operation had the vision in 2009 to create an outpatient center for adults with sickle cell disease. This vision took an initial investment. The hospital had to take an initial potential loss in hospitalizing these patients and then investing into the outpatient infrastructure, both space as well as staffing, to make sure that these adults got the everyday longitudinal care that they needed to prevent those unnecessary visits to the emergency department and the hospital, which were very costly. That initial investment has been a positive financial outcome for the institution. Most institutions around this country will not invest that kind of infrastructure or staffing in order to solve a human problem and a financial problem. The university also had the vision to give seed money to start to conduct research in sickle cell disease, to better understand the fundamental basis of pain in these individuals in order to develop new treatment pathways and improve the quality of care for these individuals living with this condition. That seed money has turned into $3 million of active external funding to continue this research, to find better treatments and better pathways of care for adults with sickle cell disease. Because we have now the largest adult sickle cell program in New England and one of the largest in the country, we are poised to offer one of two newly approved, FDA-approved gene therapies for individuals with sickle cell disease. We were already getting adults with sickle cell disease coming to our state from neighboring states such as Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York. But now I envision that we will be able to attract patients with sickle cell disease from across the country and possibly across the world with this innovative gene therapy-based curative technology. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
want to join my colleagues in thanking committee, and I want to commend you all on your ability to stay attentive while you drink from the fire hose of information that you've been subjected to today. I've been inspired listening to my colleagues, especially those on at the clinical forefront of the mission of UConn Health here. I'm a physical chemist by training, and my lab works on something called NMR, which I won't go into the details, but many of you are familiar with MRI imaging. So NMR is pretty much like MRI, but instead of imaging people, we image molecules. And another important difference is that our magnets are about 5 times more powerful than the ones that are used to image people. And that's part of what allows us to extend the reach from the macroscopic down to the nanoscale of the structures of proteins, for example. So NMR, the goal of my lab is to try to develop this technology into a more powerful tool for biomedical applications, including one area being structural biology, which is the determination of the structure and the dynamics of biological macromolecules like proteins. And that has very important applications in areas like drug discovery, because proteins are the targets of virtually all drugs. And so if you know that the shape and the dynamics of the target, you have a much better chance of designing a drug that will interact and modulate the activity of that protein. The other important application is that NMR is a technology that can be used to quantify and identify all the molecules that are present in a complex mixture, a biofluid, for example, urine or plasma. And we're trying to leverage that technology to turn it into a much more powerful diagnostic instrument than has been used so far, and to be able to take it from the multi-million-dollar scale instruments that are very powerful that we have. And some of you have visited, I know, seen the large magnets that we've got in the sub-basement of John Dempsey Hospital. But one of our goals is to try to be able to translate some of the capabilities of those very powerful, very expensive instruments to the benchtop, where it could be deployed at a point of care and be much more useful in diagnostic settings. That gets me to why I'm at UConn. I had been for 23 years. I had headed a small lab at the Roland Institute for Science at Harvard University, and back in 2003, I was recruited down to UConn to take over stewardship of a small NMR lab at the time. And what was attractive to me was being at this endowed research institute that was part of Harvard. The scope of what we could accomplish was limited by the fact that we were not permitted. Part of the mission of the institute was to fund everything from the endowment. We were not permitted to even apply for external research grants. So there was a beneficial impact of that we didn't have to spend time writing grants. But on the other hand, it also limited the scope of the research problems that we could tackle. So this opportunity that came up at UConn was very exciting, because I saw it as an opportunity to be able to expand the scope of the kinds of research problems I had tackled. But I also want to point out something really quite remarkable about that recruitment. After all, I had been at this institution for 23 years, never had applied for an NIH or an SF grant. And for UConn to recruit somebody mid-career who had never held a research grant in his life before arriving was a huge leap of faith. And I hope, if Bruce is still here, not sure, but I hope I've made good on the faith that UConn put in me. And it's been really an exciting 20 years since I arrived, and what we've been able to accomplish. So in closing, I'll just say that our impact has really been quite gratifying. Something that's not shown up there. The student numbers are relatively small, but our national and international impact, I think, could be judged by the fact that technology that we support and developed and maintain is being used by investigators in 49 states in the US and 70 countries in the US by a total of 6,000 investigators use the resources that we provide for cyber infrastructure and for tools for analyzing NMR data in order to be able to advance the ability to use this technology to attack problems that are manifestly important and nearly impossible in biomedicine. I thank you.
Thank you. I'll just, as you did cite the trip that we had, that Representative Cheeseman was the only one that understood what you had to say that day. But it's been since translated, so now I have some inkling. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure, Senator, I'm not sure if that says more about me or Representative Cheeseman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you could tell, we always like to talk about the work that we're doing. And it's a bit of a challenge to explain it to this kind of group. I just left a workshop. This is why I was late. An international workshop that's online. We have one each year online and one in the summer that's in person. And it gathers scientists to learn about our virtual cell project. So as you can see from the slide, the virtual cell project is something that's sort of central to my lab. I've been leading this project for about over 20 years. We currently have 25 registered users, 25,000 registered users around the world. And it's sort of like what Jeff was just saying. It just shows that UConn really is having a major impact on the conduct of biomedicine, not just at UConn, not just in Connecticut, but around the country and around the world. The software that we developed is a way to model the intricate behavior of individual cells. And we've actually even extended it to tissue as well. It basically can model biochemical reactions in the context of the cell environment. Very complicated, multiple biochemical reactions that control how cells respond to stimuli, to their environment, and of course also to drugs. It's one component of my lab. Another focus of the lab has been on an experimental technology as opposed to a computational technology called voltage sensitive dyes. And the two images that you're seeing in the slide show the application of these dyes, in one case to the brain, and in the other case in the heart. In particular, the image showing the heart experiment. I don't know if I can control this slide from here. Is somebody able to control the slide? Oh yeah, so click that image. It's actually a movie. You guys see that? You're all facing me. I guess you're also seeing a screen. Yeah, so it's showing 3 panels. The middle one is the one that's the most important. It shows a beating heart because this was actually done during open heart surgery on a living pig. We're not doing it on people yet, but that's obviously a pig is a very, very good model for a human heart. And those waves that you see in the middle panel are waves of electrical activity. And so you know about EKGs, you can measure electrical activity with electrodes that are pasted on the chest. This is as if you had an EKG at every single pixel in that image. So as good as your camera is, is basically defining how many electrodes you can use to image the electrical activity. And that in turn, we're only showing you a normal heart rhythm here, but if we had an arrhythmia, the data that you get from that kind of high resolution movie can be moved back into computational models and allow you to pinpoint the source of the arrhythmia. So this is the kind of technology we're developing on the experimental side, and you can get rid of that now. It's allowed us to start up a small company, which is in the TIP building, and obviously to collaborate with our clinical colleagues who eventually, hopefully, will be able to take this into the human clinic. We've been able to raise over the years $75 million in external funds, as you can see from the slide. And I think it's important to emphasize that this is an investment that you're making in us, but we're bringing in all these external funds from NIH. Some of that money was actually from international grants, not just from the federal government, but this is all money that's coming into Connecticut and being reinvested in this state. I think with that, I'll stop.
Hi. So I guess I get the last half hour. I'm Se-Jin Lee, and I moved to Connecticut in 2017 after having spent 25 years on the faculty at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And I came here to take a joint position between the Jackson Lab and UConn Health. In fact, I'm actually professor emeritus at Johns Hopkins, so it's been an exciting opportunity for me here to essentially launch an entire second career. The focus of my research for many years now has been a protein that we discovered many years ago and named myostatin. Myostatin is a protein that circulates in the blood and normally acts to block muscle growth. And so the goal of our research has been to really understand how myostatin works, how it signals, how it's regulated, with the goal of ultimately developing drugs to target myostatin for clinical applications. And the types of indications that would be amenable to myostatin inhibition would be neuromuscular diseases like muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular atrophy, muscle wasting that occurs in lots of settings, but particularly in people with cancer, muscle loss that occurs in the elderly. You heard that from Dr. Cashel, and that predisposes the elderly to having falls, but also metabolic diseases like diabetes and obesity. And so for me, being at an academic medical center, being able to interact directly with physicians and physician scientist colleagues, with that clinical perspective and clinical expertise has been essential for me. And as an example of that, we just recently did a project in collaboration with Dr. Emily Germain Lee, who's a physician scientist at UConn Health, where we sent mice to the International Space Station. In fact, I think these mice were sent on SpaceX 19, and I believe one of the Lambda Vision's experiments is on the same rocket. In fact, our mice came back being able to see a lot better. But the result of that was that we showed that blocking myostatin was effective in preventing muscle and bone loss in microgravity. And we think this has implications not only for astronaut health during space travel, but also for people here on Earth suffering from bone and muscle loss. So our work over the years has generated extensive efforts in the pharmaceutical world to develop myostatin inhibitors for clinical use. In fact, every drug candidate that's been pursued was really the direct result of fundamental basic science mechanisms that we had elucidated in our laboratory. And these drugs have been tested in many, many clinical trials, and there are several that are currently in late-stage clinical trials right now. Recently, there's been what can only be described as an explosion of interest in the pharmaceutical world, as well as in the investment world, to develop myostatin inhibitors for obesity. And with that in mind, I'm in active discussions with multiple venture groups to try to start a new company based on some patents we have pending to develop the next generation of myostatin inhibitors. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your presentations. I'm going to open it up to questions, but I would like to take a few minutes myself to say why I thought this and we thought that this forum was important. For me, in the last several months, I have read with great interest a number of stories in the Hartford Courant, in particular, coming out of UConn Health. Some you've heard about today in terms of the work, in terms of lessening the effects of stroke. That was a front page story of the Hartford Courant that could have worldwide implications. I understand right now it's, as was said today, still work with respect to mice, but that the goal is to, and they've seen promise with respect to having that advancement with respect to human trials. Also, with respect to the brain surgery that we heard about today, a young man who, as I understand it, from Brazil, who had incurable, devastating headaches where, I hope I'm not saying anything out of turn here, but apparently had attempted suicide at one point. His pain was so great and told to be incurable. And he has been effectively, I believe, very positive results in terms of the surgery that was performed here at UConn and the two doctors who performed that surgery. And I know there are others, but one in particular that got my attention in addition to those two. And I'm forgetting the enzyme that it's a small, rare disease, but where those who are afflicted by it have to take, I'm forgetting now, it's cornstarch. Like every 3 hours, they have to ingest cornstarch every 3 hours of their life. And the work here at UConn Health I know has cured folks of this or reduced the effects of that terrible affliction. And so while there's been conversations about the need for UConn to have a hospital, that Harvard doesn't have a hospital, that Yale doesn't have a hospital. And I think we've heard today, but I'd like to ask the question, if UConn did not, if John Dempsey were no longer, and Dr. Liang or anyone else that wants to answer this, or all of you, take a minute. If UConn didn't have John Dempsey affiliated the way it is today, what would the impact of that be for the state of Connecticut and the residents of our state?
Thank you very much, Senator, for that just very pointed but clear question. So first of all, we're different from a private hospital or private academic medical center because we have a public mission. And the public mission is, for example, on training the next generation of physicians, surgeons, and dentists. 75% of our medical school students and dental students come from the state of Connecticut. So they end up staying here and serve the citizens of Connecticut. It's a wonderful workforce source because these graduates, they come back because their families live here. Their parents might be aging and they wanted to stay close at home. And it's different from the private hospitals where they're not taking students from the state. And so that is a remarkable difference. The other one is that we are an integrated system. Harvard Medical School relies on the research conducted at its teaching affiliates, Mass General Brigham, Beth Israel Deaconess, and some of the other hospitals. Now, those hospitals have invested over decades in the infrastructure and the culture of doing research and innovation, taking advantage of the clinical population of patients that they treat. So essentially, those teaching affiliates of Harvard Medical School is like an integrated academic health system. And in fact, I know for a fact that the amount of extramural funding by Harvard Medical School teaching affiliates actually exceed the funding by employed faculty at Harvard Medical School. So they didn't need to, so the teaching affiliates are able to do their job. Now, we are extremely grateful to our teaching affiliates, but their focus is on taking care of patients. They do not do or have the infrastructure to do cutting edge innovation research that we do, and which I hope you heard from our faculty today. So we're going to need the John Dempsey Hospital to be there to be part of an integrated academic health system. We aspire to be like UNC Chapel Hill that was mentioned today, University of Michigan Medical Center, Ohio State, University of California Health System. These are public academic medical centers supported by the state. And they work. They are tremendous in terms of taking care of patients and the state-of-the-art cutting-edge research and innovation that they do. And we do that too, but we do want to compare ourselves to those state-supported academic medical centers. I hope I answer your question, Senator.
And these affiliates you're referring to are the Harvard hospitals, the St. Francis's, et cetera?
That's correct. We have a very close collaborative relationship with them, and we appreciate that. And they appreciate us, and they appreciate to be a faculty member, a full-time faculty member as well. And it's a nice symbiotic relationship when it comes to the clinical education, not the preclinical education.
President Merrick, if you wanted to comment.
Yes, I would, but you heard our doctors and scientists, and the question I will refer to them. Will you come from Los Angeles to UConn, or from Johns Hopkins to UConn, or from Harvard to UConn, if we didn't have this opportunity that you seamlessly can go from the research education to the hospital? And what I heard today, the answer is no, but I don't want to assume anything. And I think we have amazing people who make difference every day in people's life, and we want to keep them in Connecticut, and we want to keep them at UConn.
Thank you. Chairperson Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to pick up on a lot of comments of my chair, but also just first thank you for a really powerful presentation. Yes, it was a fire hose, whoever said that, but I mean, my ability to retain all of it, limited, but a lot of it, the impact that you have had is clear and profound. And as a committee that, whose job is often to measure that impact, this is the kind of thing we need to hear. I while listening to you, was reminded of a law school professor who used to repeat to us that just because something is difficult to estimate doesn't mean the best estimate of its value is zero. And I think we often get a little distracted by the things that have, that have numbers on a sheet of paper, because those are really easy to measure, and we miss some of the big picture things. And that, to me, is in essence what a lot of what we're hearing today is, to feel that impact. A lot of that impact is, it's okay, in the obviously on health outcomes, healthcare, quality of life, all of that. And we could have an entire hearing focused on that and follow-up questions on that. But as we are the finance committee, I'll ask my questions about the sort of the more financial end of this. So what I wondered if some, maybe it was basically talking the mechanics of the startup, and understanding what if anything there is generalizable about how that actually works in terms of federal grant money, the cooperation with the clinicians, and then working that, taking us through the life cycle of that into the commercial marketplace. If you could flesh out an example of that, I would appreciate it.
I think the best would be to have Nicole to come to the table.
So thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, right, we started off as a true academic. I was a PhD student in Bob Burge's lab at the University of Connecticut Stores. Really had no background at all on how to take a startup and turn it into, or, you know, take research in an academic lab and turn it into a company. Like Carolyn explained really well, you know, the state was great in providing a lot of resources and mentorship to help us, you know, think about how to form a business model. What does that look like? How do you get IP? How do you build out a team with little money? What motivates people in order to do that? So, you know, I think for me, UConn has been very helpful in providing a lot of those resources. To give a couple of examples of resources within the state that we benefited from, we have been part of the program ABCT, which is the Accelerator for Bioscience Connecticut. That is an accelerator program to help companies learn how to run a business. We've been part of CCEI, which is the Connecticut Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, also a really excellent accelerator. We were part of UConn TIP, which has helped with mentorship opportunities. We participated in Carolyn's internship program. Actually, our third employee of LAM Division was one of the people that went through her internship program. We've also leveraged a number of those. CT Next was another organization which we've leveraged a lot of their resources, both in helping with internship, mentoring capabilities, and even some matching funds to grants has been another really great capability that they've helped us with. So that is really the kickoff in sort of building out the relationship and starting a company. Space, having a physical location to put our companies is really, really important. So for us, we've certainly leveraged the incubator space that we have in Farmington, Connecticut, but there are other areas within the state that they're also building up, you know, capabilities in the New Haven area, the Brantford area, as well. So that has been a really important thing and a great place, I think a great opportunity to put resources into. And then now, as we start to grow, what does that look like? How do we form clinical trials? How do we work with academic centers? So whether it is the UConn Health Center, Yale, other leading institutions. I mean, for us, we're targeting eye centers. So that's an important piece for us. But building out clinical trials, leveraging the capabilities of these institutions, I think is all really, really important. So it's a learning, you know, I think for us, it's you start off as a student, and then, you know, kind of learn, like you guys, drinking from the fire hose on how to run a business and grow your company. But for us, I mean, I think a lot of the times it's why stay here? And the truth of the matter is, really, really, we have excellent students, really great mentorship opportunities. The academic institutions, I think, are wonderful. I mean, we've had an opportunity to collaborate with material scientists, retinal specialists. That's all been tremendous. The resources that they have to help with mentorship capabilities, and the strategic location between, you know, if we need something in Boston or New York, those are all great opportunities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there's some on the committee that have time constraints, so I will pass the baton to others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Farrar.
Thank you to the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I would just wanted to acknowledge, as Representative Horn did, you all spending time with us. We appreciate it. And I can't help but think in the last few months, we've been introduced to a new campaign in our state, Made in Connecticut. And I really think if we want to make it here in Connecticut, if we want to make our economy innovative, we need to make sure that you all are supported to produce the research that is essential for that innovation. And I want to thank you for highlighting that. And to my question, I actually had a follow-up question. There was a couple slides specifically about the research dollars that have come into UConn Health specifically. And I see one slide in particular that notes a $50 million increase in research awards since fiscal year 2017. I wanted to draw that attention to that because I know as a committee, we have been very cognizant of our effort to increase your opportunity for research and decrease the barriers that you all had to research awards due to unfunded unfunded pension costs falling on your books and when you're going after those awards. So I'd love kind of to hear from you all, what more potential do you see in pursuing research awards, given that you have been freed up of that in your overhead? And how can that really ensure that UConn Health has a greater financial success in its future?
Thank you, Representative Farad. And we believe strongly, and thanks so much to you and all members of the General Assembly, Governor Lamont, and everybody to take away the legacy costs from our grant. It's going to make our grants more competitive in two ways. One is the purchasing power of every dollar that we get from external funding. Now we can hire more graduate assistants, more postdoctoral fellows, and more technicians. That's going to increase the efficiency of our research operation. The other one is really happening at the peer review committee. When our colleagues who are reviewing our grants, they said, you know, why are UConn, you're so expensive? The fringe rate is 70, 80%. We're used to 29%. And, you know, we just don't know why we have to pay such high fringe rate to do research that even though you're very competitive and it's very unique, we want to fund you. But we do have this question. So we hear that at the level of the peer review committee that judge the evaluation and evaluate the merits. They're not supposed to take that into account when they give us the overall impact score. But, you know, they look at the numbers, they kind of smirk at it and frown on it. And I think it adversely impact on the final score that we get our grants. So we believe that also is going to make us more competitive. So those are the two reasons that I see that we're going to continue to increase the grant funding. But it's going to take a couple of years, right? Because the grant cycles run about 3 years, sometimes 4, and our people are putting grants all the time. So we're going to begin to see that in the not too distant future. But thank you so much for that question.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I'll defer to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Cheeseman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming here today. 3 questions. I hope they're quick. First, the CHIP program. How many of the companies, or individuals who've utilized it, the companies are still in existence and are still in Connecticut? Number 2, you cited the increase in revenue at the health center. How much of that is driven by actual increase in patient treatments as opposed to the rate of medical inflation? And finally, for Dr. Wagner, sort of personal interest, is there an application in what you're doing to treat diabetic retinopathy? And those are my questions.
Thank you, Representative Cheeseman. The first question, as I recall, is how many of the TIP companies that are present or have graduated are still in existence? I would say majority. I can't give you the exact percentage, but majority of them are, even after they graduated, we stay in touch with them and to help them in any way that we can to ensure the success. It's a long road from beginning of an idea, a concept, and reduce it to practice. And very importantly, how it will become commercially competitive, because that's what the investors are looking at to get their returns on their investment. And so it's a long road, and we stay in touch with the companies that have graduated. And thanks really to the leadership of the university that have that special concern for the graduates of the company. The second question has to do with the grant funding.
Sure, no, the second question. So the revenue increase at the health center, I believe it was 919 million, or the revenue you were achieving.
Yes.
And I wondered how much of that was due to increased inpatient volume and treatments, as opposed to how much is driven simply by the rate of medical inflation, which is very high. And if
Yes.
you need to get back to me on any of this, I would welcome that. You may not have that at the tip of your fingers.
Oh, okay, I think Jeff Gigan can answer that question better than I can. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Representative. The quick answer is we will get back to you on the details, but it is a combination of both. The volume is the main driver that actually is increasing the revenue at the rate we are, but overall getting paid more for the same items that we did in prior years is also on that. So we'll do that benefit analysis and let you know what the rate is driving it versus what the volume is driving.
Thank you. And my final question related to Dr. Wagner's work. I have a personal interest. My late husband was a type 1 diabetic and went blind as a result. So I'd be curious, is there an application?
And Senator Moore, who's on Zoom, has a question.
Thank you, Senator Fonfara. I'd like to compliment all of the presenters today and the information. Especially Dr. Healy, I really want to commend you. I know a little bit about research, but I've not learned a lot about how that research is replicated, how it turns into a business. But I'm impressed by the idea that we're teaching others who come through learning on how to take it from that clinical setting into a business, because that encourages them to want to learn the whole process. And then the mentoring that you're doing for these students to go into businesses and to multiply their efforts. I just see it as more than just healing people. I see it growing our economy and contributing to our economy and educating more families that are related to doctors and students. So I want to thank you. I was really impressed. I've replicated a program that was started at the University of Arkansas Medical Research. And in 20 years, I've never heard a better explanation of how they come to the marketplace. So thank you. I do have this question that has always been burning in my heart, is that how does the state, who has funded the research and the CDC and all the other organizations, how does that help us in the state in the way of income? That it becomes not just a business for the medical person who's created something innovative, but the state has funded some of that. How does that money make it back to us as citizens? And thank you. I'm truly grateful.
I will try to answer that question. It's not easy to answer because there are different models, but through one like BioConnecticut and BioConnecticut investment, through Connecticut Innovation, we run a number of the seed fundings. Some of that seed funding finished in the number of the companies startup. One of the best example how it then finishes in the hands of the state is through there are contracts that when the company is successful and goes to IPO or there is acquisition, the money has to come back to state. There is a portion of that money that is negotiated by contract and also through the taxes. And one successful example, one successful acquisition that happened last year is BioHaven pharmaceutical technology that is based in New Haven. The CEO of the company is a UConn graduate. He started his research as a student at UConn. He went to medical school. He did residency at UConn. He worked for the number of the companies, and then he started his own company. And he used UConn patent and Yale patent as a part of his drug discovery for the migraine treatment. And last year, he sold the company or part of the company for $13 billion to Pfizer. So imagine of the taxes that that company and that person is paying to Connecticut. So that is a huge return on investment. And we have to start look where it started. And it started at university. So if we create more of those companies, and this person is now looking for clinical trials and treatment of the Parkinson's disease and some other diseases and collaborating with UConn, we have successful models. We just have to keep more of those and tell the stories of success because our citizens are not aware of those successes. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moore. Representative Mashinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very impressive group of researchers and their research today. I wanted to ask, is anyone working on primary prevention of some of the diseases that are big cost drivers in Connecticut? For example, to reduce the incidence of breast cancer or the incidence of prostate cancer or any of the other expensive problems that we deal with in the healthcare system. The primary prevention of the disease rather than, I know you work on the treatment of the disease after it appears, but do we have anyone working on primary prevention?
So I'm going to give a sort of broad yes to that and say I could spend the rest of the day going through details, but maybe I'll showcase one example, which is the colorectal surveillance and prevention program that has been led by Dr. Levine and really has successfully put us on the forefront of identifying risks and modifying risks and reducing the morbidity associated with cancers like colorectal cancer, which is increasing in incidence. And you may have seen in the news also something that's affecting younger patients more often. And so this program is, I think, the sort of model that you're looking for and really impacts cancer before it becomes the big problem that we need to deal with.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Mashinsky. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the Capitol, our UConn researchers and administrators. I think it's important to kind of emphasize that UConn is our state university and is what we are defined by the rest of the country as the state university system. And that is very important to me. But also, I think it's equally important. This presentation hits home for me because as part of the bipartisan co-chair of the Bioscience Caucus with Senator Cohen, Representative Steinberg, and Representative Yacarino, we know in depth the kind of contributions and innovation and discoveries that you all do at UConn in conjunction with Jackson Labs and with Yale. These are real innovations, as you have learned from many of our colleagues, asking you about specific personalized medicine solutions, that this is about finding solutions that are market valued, but also create better life and quality life for people from your research. But I ask that because one of the challenges you have is you not only compete in this marketplace of Connecticut and the Northeast, you compete with researchers from around the world. And can you elaborate a little bit more in regards to the fiscal challenges that we're kind of debating in our General Assembly related to academic funding, how that is impacting your ability to recruit and retain exemplary world-class research talent?
Thank you so much, Senator Wong. I'll take a stab at answering your question. I think, prior to our legacy costs being removed, I mean, that's something we grapple with. But thanks to you and General Assembly, to the governor, that now is removed, as was alluded to earlier. That's going to make us even more competitive because of the increased ability to use the funding to hire additional research personnel to propel the research forward. It is highly, highly competitive. We're not just competing with, here in the Connecticut, in Northeast, in the country. It's really, as you said, globally, and you got to have novel findings almost every day. They could be positive, they could be negative, but the negative one would show us the pathway to lead to a positive, potentially transformative, groundbreaking finding. And so all that is happening every day. And I would venture to say that our researchers are eternally grateful because we heard directly from every one of them when their fringe rate is reduced to be similar to that of their colleagues at other institutions. And they also, when they get up in the morning, they tell me they charge. They want to come and work. Maybe they'll, by the end of the day, they'll discover something that no one else in the world has discovered. So that is the kind of the journey that they are taking, and although risky, but the satisfying, rewarding moments are well worth it.
I think it's important to understand that. Is there anybody else I wanted to add?
I want to say that we are all competed for the limited pool of talents. It takes years and years of investment to have the world-renowned scientists. And it takes equal effort to bring them to Connecticut. So if you publicly shame the medical doctor for making the top salaries in Connecticut, that is not saying this is inviting environments. We look the salaries and we provide our best and brightest with competitive salaries that we analyze. But they are not something that they will not be paid at other institutions. So I want all of us to keep that in mind when you read about top the salaries and you see the doctor paid 1 million. That doctor at Emory University will be paid 1.5 million. We all have to ask ourselves, why did that doctor decide to come to Connecticut? Why somebody from Los Angeles comes to Connecticut? What do we provide as a full package? And what do we do to retain those people? One thing is to attract people. You have to be competitive. You have to be collaborative. You have to provide the infrastructure, all kinds of supports for businesses to grow, for people to innovate, in order for them to stay in Connecticut.
Thank you, Dr. Merrick. I think, would it be fair to also to have UConn acknowledge that we can always do better. We can always increase greater efficiencies. As we have seen in the legislative review process, there are room for improvement in regards to accountability and transparency in regards to taxpayer dollars to support our state universities. So I guess I wanted to hear that as much as I have been full-throated in my support and recognition of supporting UConn and its researchers and its search of excellence, would it also be fair for the university to acknowledge that work is in progress and striving to create greater efficiencies, greater transparencies, as an example with the legacy benefit costs that you have articulated well? Would you say that the university has to do their equal part in regards to creating greater efficiencies and transparency and accountability in how they spend taxpayer money?
Absolutely. We are always about how to be the better institution. We are all for the full transparency. We are all for the communication, and we are all for the improvement. And every day that we work, we strive for that improvement. And we are very grateful for all state investment. As you heard about technology incubation and bio and all of these great initiatives, none of those will not happen without your support. And we are truly grateful, and we are doing, and we will do our part to improve our efficiency. Thank you for that question and comment. And Dr. Liang wants to elaborate further.
Thank you, President Merrick. Senator, if I may, in the printout or in the file, if you go to page 57, it summarizes. This was prepared by Jeff Gigan, our CFO. Since FY18 through FY24, we anticipate a total financial improvement, saving, and revenue increase for the entire UConn Health, and also, of course, UConn in that same table as well. It's something we continue to strive to do, but appreciate your feedback there.
No, thank you. And we have to find solutions because it is important for UConn to succeed. But at the same time, I think we can all strive to do better and be respectful of taxpayer dollars. So thank you for the leniency and the time, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. But I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask these questions. Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd just like to say that the exchange between Senator Wong and President Merrick, I think, for me, gets to the heart of the issue. You know, we can either be focused on, well, let me say, firstly, when you think of Sloan Kettering, and someone's been diagnosed with cancer and they can't find an answer here, you often hear, at least in this part of this country, Sloan Kettering, or St. Jude, or the Mayo Clinic, and on and on. Most people don't think about dollars and cents. They think about cures, they think about therapies, they think about trials. Is there something that can cure my son, my mother, my spouse, my partner? And for some reason, Connecticut can't be that. We are that in basketball. We want to be the best in basketball, and we show up, you know, every night. If there were a game every night, we'd be watching. But when it comes to UConn Health, we want to look at it from a ledger. And that should not be who we are. Yeah, we have a responsibility to taxpayers, as Senator Wong said. But if it's your child, if it's your family member, for some reason, you're not thinking about dollars and cents any longer. You hope that UConn is, as was just asked by Representative Cheeseman, would Dr. Wagner's work would have helped my husband? Would a staffer here in this building's father recently diagnosed with cancer? Would the work at UConn help him? And so I hope this forum today, and let me just say there have been a number of members who are not here in this room, but they've been watching on Zoom today, and they've heard all the comments and questions and your wonderful presentations. I hope it has an impact. I'm a believer in public investment, and I believe most people in this building do as well. We wouldn't have done the 3 iterations of UConn, whatever 1,000, and what that's done. And President Merrick, I'll just say that no one represents this institution better than you. You see it every day. You speak about it every day. You educate us about what the real world is and what you have to face and your administration has to face to make this institution what your vision, which I think is incredible. We're very lucky to have you. And we need to support you in every way we can, because I know if your vision is realized, what that could mean for all of Connecticut. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.